Welcome back to Beginning Rails 8. In this video, we'll go over setting up a new application. And what I mean by that is, first of all, we'll get Bootstrap installed. So if you don't know what Bootstrap is, it's a CSS framework that allows you to create a really nice looking site without having to write a lot of CSS. That's something I enjoy as a developer. There are other frameworks you can use like Tailwind. Tailwind is going to be a lot more flexible, but of course, you're going to have to do more work. There's also Foundation. And of course, you can always stick with Sass like we did in our scaffold. And then we'll cover creating static pages like our home page and our about page. We'll also add in some navigation. We'll deal with flash messages, and we'll add in titles for each page. So we're going to start off with a brand new application because our Rails generator will automatically create an application with Bootstrap installed. In our previous scaffold application, we just included Sass. Now, also in the next video, we'll recreate our task model and controller from scratch without using the scaffold, so we'll learn how all of the code works. So make sure you get a new private repository for my class. And in the new private repository, you're going to want to create a new Rails application. So go back to that setup Rails video and create the application the same way you did before, except with a slightly modified command that will include Bootstrap. So if you just run Rails new, it'll print out a lot of different options for you. So if you want to look at these options, you can. This is one option we're including so that we don't get the automated GitHub actions that will use up extra resource on our GitHub. So we want to make sure we include that one. Also for our CSS, we have the option to include Bootstrap or Tailwind or some of these other ones as well. And that's the other option that we want to use. And if you want to use a dev container, of course, you want to include the dev container option. And again, go back to that setup Rails video. You'll want to run almost the same command. The only thing is that you'll want to swap the -c Sass that we did for Bootstrap. I'm calling my application to do auth because eventually we're going to add in authentication to this to do application. You need to change that for your application. And again, you need to know if you're using dev containers or not. If you're going to run on GitHub code spaces, you do want to skip the dev container option because you don't want to create containers we're not going to use. Of course, we're using Bootstrap instead of Sass, so that's going to be the only change that you'll make in the initial command to create this new application. Now I have Rails installed on my local machine, so it's okay for Rails to create our new application with dev containers inside of that. But if you don't have Rails installed on your local machine, again, you'd use code spaces to create your application, push that up to GitHub, and then clone it back down to your computer so you can run it in a dev container. And after that runs, we'll go into our application and we can open it up in our Visual Studio Code. Now this is for OrbStack only, but I can add in a local domain, so I can use to do auth.local if I'm using OrbStack. And the other thing that I want to edit is my procfile.dev file and add the -b0000 so that OrbStack can find our application. Since we are using Bootstrap, we do got to get that set up. So we want to run the build Rails CSS colon Bootstrap or CSS, sorry, it's CSS install colon Bootstrap. And that'll install our Bootstrap. So now we can start our application by running bin/dev, and we'll get our Bootstrap plus our CSS compiler. But now we can open up our application in the browser. By the way, if you are using a local domain, you will get this error. So to fix the error, in your config folder, environments, the development.rb, you just need to paste in that line of code that it shows you, and then make sure you kill your server and restart it. And now, whether you're using your local domain or localhost colon 3000, you should see that you're on Ruby on Rails. Now would be a good time to commit your changes into your app. So you can go here, you could run the commands on the command line, or if you want to use this, you can type your message in here and commit. So let's go ahead and create a sites controller to host our static pages, and we'll start off with our index page or our home page. So we'll use the generator to create that. So we'll do bin Rails G for generate a controller We'll call it the sites controller, and we'll have one action to start the index action. And that should have created a sites controller in here. And right now, the index action doesn't do anything, but it does by convention choose the view for the index view. So let's go back to our routes file, and we'll set up our root route here to go to the sites controller and the index action. And we'll see that we got our sites controller. If you notice, the font will look a little bit different, and that shows us that we do have Bootstrap installed and is automatically adding some style to our page. Next, this adds our navigation bar into our site. And so this is where I'll introduce you to the documentation for Bootstrap. It's at getbootstrap.com. And you can go ahead and read the docs, and there's lots of stuff here. If you scroll down the side, you'll probably find some information about nav bars right here. I found the best way to get a good nav bar is to copy it from one of the examples. And the example that you want to copy it from, if you scroll down, is the nav bars. You can either do a nav bar static or a nav bar fixed. A static nav bar will scroll off the page if there's a lot of content and you scroll. Whereas a fixed nav bar, kind of like Facebook or Instagram, the nav bar sticks at this top, and as you scroll, the content moves underneath it. And in fact, this is a fixed nav bar up here. So you can decide which one you want. I'll go ahead and grab this fixed nav bar. So I'll click on that and I'll view my page source. And from my page source, I'll scroll down and I will find my nav bar somewhere, which is right here. Here's the nav bar. It starts here with the opening nav tag, and here's the closing nav tag. I want this navigation to show up on all pages, so I'm going to go into my views and into my layout file. This is my application layout file. And once again, if you don't have any styling inside of your html.erb files, there are some extensions that you can install. And here are some of these extensions I installed: the Rails, Ruby on Rails support for Visual Studio Code, um, then the Ruby one and the Ruby LSP. And I think the one that actually gets the highlighting is the simple Ruby ERB extension right here that you can install. And now you can see I have syntax highlighting for my ERB. And then right here in the body tab, I'm going to paste in that navigation bar. Now that I have the navigation bar, we can go ahead and save this. And refreshing our route path here, now we have our navigation bar up here on the top. So let's go ahead and start customizing this navigation bar. The first thing we want to do is grab a little bit of extra CSS that doesn't come in the Bootstrap. And if you go back to the sample code, you'll see this navbar fix.css. You could go ahead and click on that and go ahead and copy. And what we'll do under our app assets style sheets folder, we can create a new file, and we'll call this the sites.scss file. And we'll paste in that code there. And you can see that our CSS is recompiling, but it doesn't get auto-included. So we have to go down here and we have to go at use and sites like that. And we can probably change all of these to use, since that's the new way of doing stuff with Sass. And then if we refresh, now our sites.index won't be hidden up behind this navigation bar. So we can start customizing this navigation bar. We probably don't want it to say fixed nav bar up at the top. And if you notice, this is an anchor link tag, but we can go ahead and use the Rails helper link to create this tag for us. And so replacing that link with a link to, and this is the text that will show up, and we want it to go to our root path, and we want to keep that navbar brand class that it had on it. And refreshing, now it says to-do list here, and when we click it, it'll always go back to our root path. Next, we have our navigation links. And if you notice, one of the navigation links is marked as active, and we have the ARIA current page right here. And that's to show this is the page that we currently are on. And of course, this is our home link right here. And then we have the other links too. Now we might have a lot of navigation links. So instead of repeating ourselves, maybe we can create a little helper that will generate all of this code. So we could call one method, maybe we call it navlink, and it will create all of this code for us. It'll also check to see if the page we're on is the current page, and it will put the active class on here, and the active class will be a little bit highlighted. So where we add new helpers is in the helper folder. So this is the app helpers folder, and I opened up the sites helper and I wrote this nav link method. It takes two parameters, the text that we want to show up and the path that it should go to. And what it's going to do is it's going to create an li tag and it's going to automatically add a nav item class to it. If we look back at our navigation, the li tag has the nav item in it. Next, we're going to check to see if the path is our current page. Then we'll put the active class on, and if not, we'll leave the active class off. We'll also add the aria current on here. And I know this isn't HTML, but these are methods that we can call that generate HTML for us. And we're still using that link to helper inside of here. So make sure we have that saved. And then we'll go to our application.html file. And we can delete these links here and we can replace them with nav link. And the text I want to have show up is home, and that should be root path. We'll add another one here. And so now I have an about page that we can add in. Of course, that path doesn't exist right now, so I'm just putting in a default string, but let's go see what that does. And we refresh, we got the home button. We also have this about button, but of course, if we click on the about button, it won't go anywhere. This is actually a 404 error, a page not found. But what we can do is add an about page. Now, before I add about page, I'll go ahead and fix some of this, and we'll say to-do list, create your own to-do list, just as for a little bit different as our home page. But we can go ahead and add a new file here, and we'll call this the about.html.erb file. And here we'll just add our h1 tag in about. And opening up our config routes file, we'll go ahead and add that. Now, if you notice, we got the site's index up here. I forgot to delete that from before. We can add in our new paths right here. And we'll say if someone gets an about link, then that will go to the site's controller and the about action. And then finally, we'll open up our controller and we'll add in an about method. And back in our application file here, we can replace this with about path. And now we have the to-do list, and if we click on the about, we go to the about page. If you notice, this is the link that stands out now as highlighted. So next, let's work on our title that shows up here in our tab bar. Right now on every page, it's just going to say to-do auth. Be nice if when we click on the about page, it'll say about up here. And then of course we have our tasks and other pages. It'd be nice to be able to add that onto our title. Now, if you notice, there's a content for title right here that prints out the content for our title. So there is a way that we can set the title and have that be our title instead of to-do auth. I'm going to modify this a little bit so that we can always have to-do auth on there, but maybe have it divided with a bar and our title. What I'm doing is I'm creating a title method that we can call to set the title on our pages. We also have this optional variable here that we can add to see if we want to show our title on the page. And so now back in our application layout file, I just modified this a little bit by printing out the title plus this little bar unless the content for the title's blank. So if there's no title, nothing will get printed out and we'll have our to-do list as our title. But if there is a title, we'll print it out, we'll print out a bar, and then the to-do list will be at the end. The other thing that I modified is I added a container div around my yield content. So I still have my yield. And then if that show title is true, that means they've called the title method and they said they want to show it on the page. We'll put the title in an h1 tag. So if we want to call that title helper, we'll just do title. Now, if you notice, there's no equal sign here because the title helper doesn't print out the title directly right here in our content. Instead, it calls the helper method that sets the content for, it sets the title so it get printed out both in our title tag and on our page. So now we can see this, and now we have our to-do list title right here. The div container moved this over a little bit, but now it's printing out our title, and we see our title up here. Now, when we click on the About page, there is no title. We didn't set a title yet because I didn't call that method. So we just have the plain to-do list as our title. So in our About view, we can get rid of this H1 tag and then replace it with the title helper call, and we'll call About. And this time I'm going to say show title, I'm going to pass in false to show title. And so if I refresh, we see that we don't see the About title on this page. So now it's kind of optional whether or not we want our title. Notice it is up here, but it's not on our page. If we want to show on our page, we don't do anything. And if we don't want it to show on our page, we can include the false option up here. So when we put false right here, the title won't show on our page. And again, how that works back into our site's helper. This is an optional parameter, or we set it to true. If they don't pass in anything, that means it's going to show on the page. But if they do pass in false, then this at show title will be false. And in our application layout file, if it's false, we'll skip over all of this. I also added another row for our yield content. Now, I actually do want about to show up on the page, so I'm going to remove that false. And now we have about back on the page. And I've gone ahead and added some more HTML into my application.layout file. I made the main class here be a container fluid so that I can position my content a little bit better. You can decide what you want to do in here, but I did add this code right here for Flash messages. Now, what a Flash message is when you log into the website and then you land on a page and there's a little message at the top that says you are logged in. Or if you create a new item or something like that, it's just a message on the top that can notify your users of something that just happened. So Ruby on Rails does really well with Flash messages, but we do need to include HTML so they get printed out. Now going to the docs on our Bootstrap or Get Bootstrap, we do have these alerts, and alerts are perfect for Flash messages that show up on our page. And the alert that I'm going to use is an alert that we can dismiss. So we can click the little X button right here and the alert will disappear. So I added that HTML for those alerts into my page, but I did also add a little bit of Ruby here. So first we're going through every Flash message. We're going to get its name and its message. Its name is the type of alert that it is. And we will have either notices or alerts in Ruby on Rails. So if it's a notice, we can decide that what color it is. And a notice is just kind of a gentle message you're logged in, whereas an alert is something went wrong, like you've tried to access a page you couldn't, so you want it in a different color. So we can change what kind of an alert it is. This is called a ternary operator right here. If the name is equal to a notice, then we'll print out primary. If not, then we'll print out danger. And you can go back to the documents on our alerts, but when we do alert primary, then we'll probably have a blue colored message. And if we do alert hyphen danger, then we'll have a red hyphen or a red alert message on our page. So that's what this is doing right here. Then we'll just print out the message that comes with our alert and then they can dismiss it. And right now, we don't have any logging in or creating of any items to test these Flash messages, but we can test them out here in the About action. We'll just create a notice message that says, welcome to the About page, and also an alert that says this is an important message. So when we refresh, now we'll have our Flash messages up on the top, and they are dismissible. And now we have our application set up so we can start creating our to-do list and creating tasks. And we have all of this in place where we can get some nice navigation. We have Flash messages showing up. We have titles up here in our title or in our tab bar and on our page. And we have our layout all set. So next we'll go in and start creating a new controller to be able to create tasks.